This show furnished by Karl Gerber and Employment Lawyers Group.
Since it happens that tomorrow's a Friday, I'll call in the morning and take a sick day.
Talk Radio 790 KABC. You're listening to the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show, and I'm Karl Gerber. Warning, the content of this program may be offensive to narrow-minded bigots. Such individuals are advised to go tampume their ever-growing Berber toupees that are actually nylon. Last week, the smart phonographic evidence presented by my summer associate, Somar, demonstrated the mixed-use property one of my clients, Rodriguez, worked on was waterproofed with the world's largest condom. Actually made of all recycled materials, condoms, that is. In disbelief of what I thought I saw, I contacted Rhemus Helms, the sponsor of this show and the most important man of Sun Valley, California. We all know made his fortune when his genital got infringed via an unauthorized mold.
Correction, Mr. Gerber. On that fateful day, you were sworn into the California bar in '93, and Michael Bloomberg offered $50 million to me in a Bernie Madoff fund in exchange for the totality of my adult entertainment company, but not my genital. Before Mr. Bloomberg invited me to the Rhemus Helms Toast of New York City party later that fateful night, wherein that political imposter held a resin mold and tricked me, thereby selling the mold to Aiden and Elvira for $5 million to pay off his casino debt. Before that fateful day, I had already made a great fortune off my moneymaker. Me, my moneymaker, and me. 114 adult films that also featured some of the greatest X-rated talent in the world, including me, mostly me on the male side. Yes, me.
As you know, the Employment Lawyers Group wins. If we're going to win the wrongful termination case for Rodriguez, we need to establish he complained about inadequate waterproofing and quite possibly an unclean... Rhemus, what's with this sexy secretary with her blouse open and a pointer in her hands? Excuse me, miss, this is a small studio and you're bumping, I mean putting your body on top of the mic. Rhemus, she broke the guest mic for the weekly comedian that isn't funny. Oh, well, I guess no guest comedians this week.
Mr. Gerber, my cosplay secretary practically broke her Brazilian butt on the edge of that console. The least you could have done would have been to put your hand underneath her butt when you saw her rounding that corner. It's still fragile.
That would have been unconsented sexual battery, the touching of a buttocks. Do you think I'd ever do a thing like that?
Isn't there a defense if a woman's rear end is in jeopardy?
Not that I'm aware of.
Mr. Gerber, have you heard of the last clear chance?
Well, that's a concept in negligence. Employment law isn't based on negligence, except all the know or should know standards on sexual harassment and unlawful wage practices. Well, that's actually a good 2/3 of my practice, at least.
Well, as I recall the legal doctrine, the question is who had the last clear chance to shield my cosplay sexy secretary's most fragile behind from the grievous injury she just suffered.
Well, how was I supposed to know she was healing from a Brazilian butt implant?
You really should consider using my psychic. She has an opening now that Nancy is no longer with us.
Nancy Davis?
You're the only one who calls her that.
Miss Cosplay Secretary, these are your glasses. You can take them. No, I'm not interested in putting them on you. What? No, I don't want to remove your heels. Rhemus, she just offered to strip for us.
It's a great idea. The strip would get picked up on the microphones.
How would the sounds of a cosplay sexy secretary with a Brazilian butt, albeit one healing from the recent implant, get picked up on a microphone?
Mr. Gerber, you know what happens when Nizuki and I get together, don't you?
Yes, we've been through this a few times now. You write each other fortune cookie sayings the first hour or two, and you don't engage in any verbal communications.
I wasn't referring to our foreplay. We are the gods of hellfire, and we bring you fire.
Yeah, I've been meaning to ask you about that. Have either of you got first, second, or third degree burn?
Oh, Mr. Gerber, the god of hellfire does not burn.
You aren't the god of hellfire, Rhemus. Arthur Brown is.
He is?
But the two of you do catch on fire when the world-famous Nizuki and Rhemus Helms, the most important man of Sun Valley, California, go at it together.
Have you heard of the fires in the Amazon forest this week?
Oh, yes. Most unfortunate proof of climate change. Those fires release enough carbon to send parts of the rainforest into savannas and change the ecology of the world.
My sex robots are not to blame.
Oh, no, I never thought about that.
I can assure you, only a few of my sex robots have gone into the Amazon. The Helms Foundation has sent them there purely on a fluid replenishment mission.
And how are they doing that?
Mr. Gerber, this is commercial radio. As I was saying, when my cosplay sexy secretary strips, you'll hear it.
I don't think I want to. Oh, she's doing it! What? It's like a tornado sound. You can't have this going on in here. I consider this whole thing with the sexy cosplay secretary to be sexism, sex discrimination, and the degradation of a woman.
Mr. Gerber, I have Sexy Gonzalez, the male assistant. He's a leading Latin lover. He's back on the ranch. If you'd like, he can come here during the middle of this show.
It's really okay. I have no interest in seeing Sexy Gonzalez put on a strip show that presumably creates thunder sounds as far away as Santa Monica Boulevard.
No, suit yourself. You could send your wife pictures.
If the cosplay sexy secretary could move her at derriere away from the blow-up of the waterproofing materials, perhaps I could take a look at the blow-up you prepared.
Oh, blow-up dolls. Oh, such a primitive form of sex doll.
The blow-up of the waterproofing material on the house that Rodriguez excavated, please. Could your sexy cosplay secretary move her bottom away from that demonstration?
Mr. Gerber, her rear size is only 30. Can't you look past her butt?
Yes, men and women should look past each other butts in the workplace. View your coworker for their skills, the teamwork you can do together. It's not about who's got the better butt and how you can get the best view of it. That's a sexually hostile work environment.
Can she use the pointer? I have a presentation for you.
If it doesn't involve any more stripping.
As you can plainly see, she's plunging the pointer into all of the areas of weak tension. The Helms Foundation proved, by a preponderance of the evidence, this is inadequate waterproofing around the building Rodriguez got fired over when he made the OSHA complaint.
Yeah, we heard about that on the last show. If the sexy cosplay secretary would step away from the blow-up of that, I'd like to examine that area further. Yes, I detect several. What are those? breaks in the material. What are they?
Yeah, scientists at the Helms Foundation determined those areas of separation are where the recycled condom connections were weak. During the natural stretching of the condom around the entire circumference of the lower portion of the building, the connections to the various spent and recycled condoms broke.
I thought your research determined there are 2 layers of condoms in this waterproofing. Wouldn't the other layer still offer the needed protection to the building?
If the Helms Foundation were able to sample parts of the pieced-together spent condoms, we could make further determinations based upon Rodriguez's smartphone picture. Dr. Zhivago has made certain determinations as to what may have been the cause of the rupture.
Oh, wait a minute. Dr. Zhivago from episode 38, who sells weird-shaped miracle pills manufactured in interesting colors. She's a notary.
Doctor of Divinity. This is a different Dr. Zhivago, though.
This is the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show. This is going to get even better. Stand by for more on Rhemus Helms and the weird waterproofing we found subterranean on the job site with one of my employees complaining about it. Talk Radio 790 KABC.
Since 1993, the Employment Lawyers Group has been a consistent force in fighting for the rights of California employees. They've represented thousands of employees in cases in which they've lost their jobs, been sexually harassed, discriminated against at work, or owed wages individually or as a group such as a class action. The Employment Lawyers Group has maintained a high win rate and a serious record before the California courts. Please call 877-525-0700 for an experienced work lawyer. That's 877-525-0700. They have call takers standing by. Online, research the firm at worklawyerca.com. They have offices throughout Southern California. If you hire the Employment Lawyers Group, your legal problem becomes theirs to solve.
Since it happens that tomorrow's a Friday.
Talk Radio 790 KABC. This is the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show. I'm Karl Gerber. I'm on the air live with Rhemus Helms, and he's trying to help me on the case we had. We heard about it a little bit last week, and there's a guy who got fired for complaining about some very strange waterproofing under a house he's working on. So, Rhemus, as I recall, there are swing shift Dr. Zhivagos on different talk radio stations throughout the country. There are also day shift Dr. Zhivagos and morning shift Dr. Zhivagos. Basically, a different Dr. Zhivago for each shift in each city, thereby creating almost as large a proliferation of Dr. Zhivagos and then the unauthorized ones that the army that army of Dr. Zhivagos could fight your sex robots, and I'm not sure which faction would outnumber the other. Are you sure none of your Dr. Zhivagos are on the radio?
Now that you've raised the question, well, maybe. No, not the radio. The Dr. Zhivago with the Helms Foundation is in the pictures.
A porno actor?
No. Why do you always think all I am concerned with is that dirty, horrible, awful, wonderful, dirty stuff?
Since Dr. Zhivago is presumably a picture actor, I'm not sure he or she is qualified to make scientific assumptions about breaks in recycled condoms that serve as subterranean waterproofing on a hillside mixed-use product that was, until Rodriguez's excavation, until it caused a landslide. Well, the mixed-use project was on top of a very, very fine house in the canyon, 2 cats in the yard, a flower vase, and a fireplace to be lit while the vase is filled.
The very, very fine house, 2 cats in the yard isn't there anymore. They knocked it down and put up a parking lot.
Oh, that's a shame. I'd read they ate at Art's Deli and picked up an antique vase afterwards. Along Ventura Boulevard, it was a very foggy Studio City day. Such inspiration. I write a lot of scripts from Studio City.
Actually, They rushed back to their little house in the canyon to see if Graham could do what I did in the then popular stag film, Burning Genital. Not to be confused with Burning Man or A Stud. Thus, the reference to lighting the fire.
I won't listen to that song again. How could have you been around doing this back in 1970, notwithstanding Dr. Zhivago's apparent lack of qualifications? What conclusions did Dr. Zhivago reach?
In conjunction with the biohazard research team at the Helms Foundation, Dr. Zhivago concluded the breaks were caused by human viruses found in the recycled condom.
Oh, no! Oh, yes! I mean, for the case, it does sound like the waterproofing material was both inadequate and harmful to workers like Rodriguez.
Dr. Zhivago, in conjunction with the biohazard team at the Helms Foundation, believes the viral matter causing the breaks in the connections to the recycled condoms is previously unknown to research.
What is this viral matter?
Mr. Gerber, it is time for the sponsorship plug.
Fine. This program is made possible through a generous grant from the Helms Foundation's $5.14 billion in funding and 14 inches of endowment.
I would like it when I hear that.
The listeners are literally dying to hear more about the viral material in the recycled condom, waterproofing material that caused the ruptures. How could the Helms Foundation make all of these determinations merely by a blow-up of Rodriguez's smartphone picture?
The Helms Foundation believes they have isolated a new bacteria that has presently been unknown to man. In fact, it isn't even the creation of man.
Oh, wow. Finally, a virus caused by a woman. I do believe in equal sex viruses. So they use female condoms, too, to make the waterproofing?
Perhaps. Yes, those are larger. Mr. Gerber, I never said women caused the virus.
Tell us more about the viral material, Rhemus.
Say, for instance, a sex robot got together with another sex robot. Hypothetically, what if the manufacturer of the sex robots put a moratorium on the sex robots getting together with each other? But getting together is human nature.
But robots aren't human. Anyway, I don't want to hear about a bunch of sex robots getting together.
But take, for example, this hypothetical. The sex robots' desires are quite strong. They are sex robots. Robots are programmed. They want to obey their manufacturer, but they must satisfy their desires.
Great, but I'm not sure I care.
You should care. In a hypothetic, presume the sex robots find a plentiful supply of condoms. They'd need a plentiful supply to go about their business.
Well, why the plentiful supply? Oh, there are tons of sex robots. I get it.
That too. But their primary goal, Mr. Gerber, you know what the primary goal of a sex robot is, do you not?
Well, not by experience, of course, but in hearing about all your sex robot problems, how they were casting large quantities of fluid into the magna underneath the Fontana area of your warehouse, and that caused tons of tiny earthquakes called Swarmageddon.
Yes. You so ably covered that on episode 63, to be found on the Karl Gerber with a K channel on YouTube.
But where would a sex robot find enough condoms to go about their business if, for instance, they had to engage in those activities a few times an hour every one of their waking minutes? Question, do sex robots sleep? I mean, not with each other, but alone.
Plentiful supplies of male and female prophylactics can be found on the Rhemus Helms Cosplay Ostrich Ranch. The Rhemus Helms Cosplay Ostrich Ranch.
Now, on the last episode of this show, you indicated you only went through 612 of those 6,128 condoms used every month on the Rhemus Helms Cosplay Ostrich Ranch.
Mr. Gerber, it was inferred I personally only went through 612 condoms per month. You were disappointed. But since this is media, I wish to make a correction. There are times I go au naturel.
Now I'm assuming that the sex robots we're talking about in your hypothetical are actually products of the Rhemus Helms Corporation.
Indeed.
Well, this raises a most unseemly question. Say a sex robot is purchased by a customer for, say, $6,000.
Mr. Gerber, that is a rather entry-level price. A very base model for an entry-level buyer. Perhaps a new college graduate? Well, the Cindy D models are now on sale. There's been a lot of negative press about the class action involving the men who got stuck.
Whatever. Here's the issue I see. If customers purchase these robots for their own personal desires, I assume that the expectation is that these robots are, how do you say, how am I supposed to say this? Okay, virgins, for lack of a better word. Say, for instance, how long do these robots stay in the Rhemus Helms Worldwide Distribution Center in Fontana?
Mr. Gerber, that entirely depends on the model, the demand, the needs of the customer, the most basic human needs of the people. During tough times, whenever there is a Trump tariff hike and the stock market gets all jittery.
Oh, sales go down.
Precisely the opposite. Stress. Yes, the stress of the customers.
Rhemus, my concern with your merchandise is, say, for instance, the economy is going swimmingly. Not like a green pool full of algae if the economy is bustling because the federal government stopped taking tax dollars, or they start charging illegal immigrants thousands a day to stay at those barbaric detention centers that are going to soon have soccer fields. I guess all immigrants must play soccer, opposed to Russian face slapping. What's the demand like for those robots?
Some models do remain in the warehouse for 90 days before they are shipped off to remote areas of Australia, the red light district of Bangkok, the Farm Belt in the United States, even in those red states, like Florida, for example.
Oh, fine. Assume a sex robot was only in the warehouse 14 days. If it engages in sexual acts with other robots, protected or unprotected, well, I don't know how long robots sleep.
Not all of the robots engage in sexsomnia.
Which is the act of having sex while asleep.
How did you know that?
Oh, I know all words, don't you know? But at any contingency rate, presume a robot is only sexually active 16 hours a day. They engage in robotic sex acts with other robots twice an hour. That is 32 sex acts multiplied by 14. That's well over 400 sex acts by the time the robot reaches its buyer.
Mr. Gerber, the sex robots don't just engage in sex acts with other robots.
Before purchase?
We've enacted a strict policy at the warehouse. Engaging in sex acts with an unsold, non-demonstrator robot is immediate cause for termination.
Well, have there been any job terminations over that?
Yeah, we've lost half the warehouse staff.
What about the other half of the staff?
They're going through the grievance process.
Well, then who's running the warehouse?
Cosplay robot security guards.
Do they strip?
Only some of them.
This just keeps getting weirder. But nonetheless, the robots has engaged in at least 400 sex acts by the time they're shipped to their lucky buyers. Maybe more if they sat around collecting dust everywhere, but they're private parts.
Mr. Gerber, the virus has spread.
And the virus causing the breaks in the condoms used for waterproofing is not merely limited to your sex robots?
My robots are the source of the viruses.
This is Talk Radio 790 KABC, the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show, a show listened to by upper-income people, primarily and people with high education. If you look at the statistics, we'll be back in just a minute on, of course, Talk Radio 790 KABC.
Since 1993, the Employment Lawyers Group has been a results-oriented law firm whose goal is to get the client what they deserve. They've represented thousands of California employees who've lost their jobs, been sexually harassed, subjected to employment discrimination, or were owed wages on an individualized or group basis, such as a class action. They have a high rate of success. There are few situations involving employment law that they have not confronted. At the forefront of employee rights, they're often the first employee law firm to confront a new legal issue. For an experienced employment lawyer, call 877-525-0700. That's 877-525-0700. They have call takers standing by. Online, read more about the firm at employeelawca.com. They have offices throughout Southern California. Make your work problem theirs to solve.
Since it happens that tomorrow's a Friday.
Talk Radio 790 KABC. This is the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show. We've got Rhemus Helms live in studio tonight, and I wanted this expert opinion on this waterproofing, and one thing led to another, and now we find out his sex robots are used by the time they show up. This is terrible, Rhemus. First, your sex robots injured the buyers, and now they're infecting the world with a new sexually transmitted virus.
The only known side effect of this virus thus far, as tested by the Helms Foundation, is it breaks down rubber and lambskin.
Do you see what you started with these sex robots?
I'm the father of automated robotic sex. Procreating robots.
What really gets me is some asinine company decided to make subterranean waterproofing and have recycled condoms.
And that wasn't my idea.
That does shock me.
Mr. Gerber, as you know, I was on the set of that very fine Blue movie in '73, and I said, have it your way, have it your way. And then a slick New York advertising agency stole that and sold it to
the footnote on this reference is episode something or other of this show. You'll just have to hear all those shows with Rhemus Helms to find it on the Karl Gerber with a K channel on YouTube.
The time has come.
For what? For me to return to life before this show in which Rhemus Helms made his fortune? Oh, you know how. He refers me bizarre guest after bizarre guest. And they're ever-growing Berber toupees that are actually nylon.
There are other things, too, that grow and grow and grow.
I just want to return to a normal world without ever growing lo mein noodles that are actually nylon used to perforate the stomachs of liberals, the one ever-growing sanitary napkin per menstrual career policy by the evil Myron Alfombra, pronounced Matting but spelled M&M, who never shows up on this show, and sex robots, the world's largest condom. I can't take it anymore.
Mr. Gerber, the time has come for me to enter.
Enough of these sexual references.
Why do you assume everything I say somehow relates to sex? Size of my, the robots, the Olympics I want to start.
Well, doesn't all that relate to sex?
Of course it does. And Nazuki, the most famous Nuru nurse in the world, is my lover. And you threw out all those hints about marriage. And now she wants serious about it. Not even wanting to give live Nuru massage trainings in airports, like near the Burbank airport anymore. She says Izuki or May can do the demonstrations.
Well, as she rightly said back on episode 68, most technological advances are due to sex. That also means that without sex, employment opportunities are meek. Forget about Amazon. I mean, come on. Videotapes, cell phones, smartphones, the internet. I mean, they're for sex. Answering machines, answering services, and most beauty products.
And the condom industry and the dog industry. It's time I get in on the condom industry, I think.
Oh, Rhemus, I feel like you ping-pong from week to week, from starting the sexual Olympics to making sex robots that procreate. They cause earthquakes, they create viruses, and they get men stuck. And now it's woof. Let's get into the condom industry.
Mr. Gerber, reuse, and recycle. The Earth won't be here forever.
Are you proposing reassembling condoms? How is this any different than the one sanitary napkin per menstrual career policy?
That piece of the conservative agenda is aimed at making the exempt woman 36 or 38, 24, 36, a maximum of 2 pounds for each foot above 5 feet, a breeder class. The women subject to the one sanitary napkin per menstrual career policy will have their tubes tied. They won't be the breeders. They'll be on equal, if not better, toenails than men.
Okay, I admit it was a rather harsh example I gave comparing a reused condom program to the one sanitary napkin per menstrual career policy advocated by Myron Alfumbra, pronounced Matting, but spelled M&M, and the Senate conservatives?
I aim for a more natural, organic universe. A place where spent condoms are recycled into all sorts of everyday products. Disposable knives, forks, even spooning.
Yuck! I don't think I'd want to eat from those.
How is this any different than a rubber tire that rode over animal waste?
Well, I'm not aware that we're eating off recycled rubber tires.
You aren't homophobic, Mr. Gerber, are you?
I have to be honest that the concept of eating off of a repurposed, recycled, spent condom, male or female variety, it just doesn't grab me.
I'm so disappointed. I thought you would back me on this ecological venture.
Well, what happened with your sexual Olympics?
The more I thought about that, I realized I wouldn't be able to discuss it in detail on this show. And it's the only program that gives me fair coverage.
Well, all the more reason to do it.
Right here, now. You told the sexy cosplay secretary to straighten up the station manager's desk.
Well, at least with the sexual Olympics, you'd be fostering goodwill between the nations of the world. You'd be giving people a reason to get in shape. Hell, President Johnson created the Physical Fitness Award a long time ago. I'm sure if you pulled the right things, you'd get somebody in government to allow that award to be given out to your contestants.
Contestants? Yes, contestants. I'd have contestants. Do you think I could have my own reality show and, maybe someday become president? The latest Gallup poll shows I have a 69% lead over Biden.
Well, what's your lead, Rhemus, over that other guy?
98%, according to leading scientists at the Helms Foundation.
Well, are we flip-flopping again, going from sex robots to take a run at the White House where you aren't even over the product liability lawsuits in the sex robots? And could the coaches in your sexual Olympics get stuck in some sexual harassment scandal?
Last time I was on this show, I told you the judge had authorized a program where class members must opt in for their names and addresses to be given out.
Yeah, how did that go in the most sensitive situation of privacy we're dealing with here?
Only 3 men opted in, and one of them already died.
Did he die due to that product? That's horrible.
He had a heart attack having sex with his wife. What a wonderful way to leave this world.
Well, then there aren't enough people for the numerosity requirement of the class action.
Only 3 class members, sent notice by mail, opted in. The class members allowed to make internet claims, That's another story.
Oh, do tell us that riveting story about the potential class members in the sex robot putative class action declaring their identities through the internet.
Seems all of them were actors.
That's weird.
It all started with that guy, Jesse, on the show about empires. You know, the Inland Empire.
He made a claim?
Yes, sir. He claimed the Nazuki sex robot discriminated against him on the basis of his race. But it was later determined he asked her to call him names. And he filmed it in his kitchen.
Well, that doesn't sound like a very good claim. This is the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show. I'm actually a real workplace lawyer, and, the stuff we talk about in the show, it kind of comes from some of the cases I'm involved in, actually. But Rhemus Helms is the most important man in Sun Valley, California, and we come back, I want to find out more about all his really very strange legal problems on Talk Radio 790 KABC.
Since it happens that tomorrow's a Friday, I'll call
Talk
in the
Radio
morning
790
and take
KABC. This is the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show. I'm Karl Gerber, and we have Rhemus Helms live in studio, and he was telling us about, it might be a publicity stunt. What was it, Rhemus?
What some people will do for publicity. Now, I, for instance, during those tender days when my genital got infringed, I had to thank Mother Moses. The world knew that fake, no-good imitation didn't resemble what Mother Nature bestowed on I. No, sir. And you once said a judge could order an independent medical examination to see if my genital resembled that piece of trash after the resin mold got broken when that idiot used it to slap a woman's butt at the party. And you tried to put it back together. The world knew I wasn't a man in 14 pieces.
Well, then that situation defamed you. Maybe the $200.1 million settlement was worth it in the end for Aiden Elvira.
Oh, Mr. Gerber, I don't believe you could even imagine the chagrin of going over to your relative's house, sitting at their kitchen table in back of a round window overlooking a green lily pond. Your older cousin serves cheese sandwiches and smiles at you. Was she smiling just to be friendly, or was she thinking about that awful fake imitation of your genital cracked in 14 places?
Well, that never happened to me.
We're talking about me.
Well, did you ask her which it was?
Oh, not in my wildest dreams of eating phosphate and honey together. Did I ask Sally Mae Jr. what her true feelings were about that?
Which was worse, the wonderment of whether Sally Mae Jr. ever saw the infringed product, or just outright asking her, what are your true thoughts about the infringed reproduction of my genital running around? Well, maybe not running around, going in and out of a bunch of states from here to Georgia.
She's my cousin. How do you think I felt about Aunt Margaret?
I don't even know who Aunt Margaret is.
Horrified. Absolutely horrified is the word.
Is Aunt Margaret a horrific woman?
Mr. Gerber, she was my second favorite aunt. My dear Aunt Sally was my favorite.
Well, then what's the big deal?
Have you heard of a swap meet?
Oh, this sounds horrifically sexual. Not something I want to get into on the radio.
Oh, Mr. Gerber, a swap meet is either indoors or outdoors. Vendors bring their merchandise and sell. Buyers may or may not pay an admission fee. Some come merely to look. Others test merchandise. Aunt Sally is a buyer.
Oh, so is this like the Pomona swap meet where they sell vintage car parts?
And not the kind of swap meet I am referring to.
Well, then what's swap there?
Spit.
It's a swap meet where you kiss people?
My dear beloved departed Aunt Sally was a cook. Oh, how she skewered rabbit, tomatoes and rabbit feet, bread pudding, pigs and oats, pomegranate and traders, unleavened bread and palatial beer roots, green lettuce and holiday sauce not for sale.
Then how does spit fit in? Oh, gross! She didn't use water when she boiled things.
Mr. Gerber, a spit is a skewer used to roast meats. And Sally went to swap meets for cooking utensils.
Well, how's that embarrassing?
Just suppose, one southern afternoon, my dear Aunt Sally, who was widowed since the days of Woodrow Wilson, saw something at the swap meet.
What's the big deal with a swap meet?
Where my dear Aunt Sally went was more like a flea market.
Rhemus, what's the difference?
A flea market is where it's all divided into spaces.
Then what's a swap meet?
Totally open. One big place, open for all.
Open for all? She was into that? What happened to your dear Aunt Sally at the flea market?
Come to think of it, it was a swap meet. As I recall the story, the vendor practically gave it away.
Oh, that's terrible. I don't think people should give themselves away.
Mr. Gerber, the vendor thought it was broken. The merchandise had no name on it, no insignia, and it certainly didn't look a thing like anything from the master of the Helms Corporation. I suffered severe emotional distress and mental anguish when Cousin Tolly told me what Aunt Sally had been doing.
Come on, Rhemus. I can't believe you'd take it out on an older lady. I'm doing stuff like that. You even said in your sexual Olympics there'd be age categories up to 100 and beyond.
Mr. Gerber, I don't condone incest.
How can you think of it that way with the mold being so off?
It was supposed the thing from the swap meet, the thing. Swamp Meat Aunt Sally paid $3.95 for that thing. That thing was supposed to be me.
Oh, but it wasn't, Rhemus. It was a fake, a fraud, a not very good example. And Aunt Sally had no idea. She thought she got a bargain back whenever this happened. I do presume those kind of bedroom toys were going for more than $3.95. Well, maybe not if they're cracked in 14 places.
Do you know how Aunt Sally died?
Well, she was a blood relative of yours, right?
Yes.
Then I can only imagine how she died.
Not every member of the Helms family has died during a sexual act. My granddad, Bemis, he died in the Amazon... no, actually, it was a woman doing the Amazon thing on him. There was my cousin Webus.
Oh, like Egdon Webus from episode 35. That's a coincidence.
Now that I think about it, Webus died in a steam room. Bad heart. He should have done his business elsewhere.
Well, so did Aunt Sally die spit roasting?
Mr. Gerber, if I didn't have the respect, I would deck you with my moneymaker right now. The nerve of you accusing Aunt Sally of a two-way service.
Well, I thought she was in the spit cooking.
Mr. Gerber, spit cooking, not roasting.
Oh, I am so sorry. I didn't mean to insinuate your Aunt Sally would ever experience another man after she was widowed during the days of Woodrow Wilson.
My dear Aunt Sally was celibate for 75 years. Sort of made the rest of the family wonder if she's really a Helms.
Well, then it is possible for you to have admiration for someone who doesn't have a sex addiction?
Yes.
All right, Rhemus, let's stop beating the bush. How did Aunt Sally die?
The mold.
Oh, no.
It broke into 14 pieces. My dear Aunt Sally's heart wasn't up to going under the knife.
Well, I didn't realize that would be the only method of getting those pieces out of that place.
Oh, she had one of those doctors who's against health care. He's on the radio now in Alabama saying he wants unaffordable health care and firmly believes in preteen moms. I think he's a real sexist, too. He thinks the only thing a woman is good for is having children. Imagine that. He wouldn't help a poor old 97-year-old woman just trying to have a good time. Mr. Gerber, do you think the statute of limitations for medical malpractice might still be there for my dead Aunt Sally?
I'm an employment lawyer. I'm not licensed in Alabama. I'm so sorry to hear about your dear Aunt Sally.
Well, at least there ain't no question about her really being a Helms on account of the way she went out.
Not to change the subject or anything, but how is your daughter Hanita Orchid Helms' talent going these days?
We're going to win the war. Soon there won't be any ever-growing Berber toupees that are actually nylon, lo-mein noodles that are actually ever-growing nylon, or the one sanitary napkin per menstrual career policy.
Oh, man, how's that going to happen?
Anita, my beloved Anita. Say, Mr. Gerber, have you given any more thought to paying your gas bill at a New Room massage clinic? You could have a daughter as lovely as talented Anita.
I'm sticking with the U.S. mail.
Imagine this. The Cindy D sex robot entered the ever-growing Berber that is actually nylon factory of the evil Myra and Alfombra, pronounced Matting but spelled M&M. The goons let her in. Of course, you know, her sexy voice is amazing. And then the Santa.
Oh, so what if the goons smell Anita's scent? She puts in candles that simulate the human sexual experience. You know, all that does is buy time.
Time to stop the Berber from growing. Time to destroy the ever-growing Berber that is actually nylon.
Well, this sounds like an abortion.
It is.
And all this started with a simple question whether subterranean waterproofing was really a condom and whether it was safe and an effective form of waterproofing. And look what we heard tonight. This is crazy. Okay, this is the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show. Hopefully you're live streaming on the Karl Gerber with a K channel or somewhere else on the internet that seems to get 4 to 10 times as many listeners as a station every week. You can go back and listen to old episodes if you so desire. And otherwise, you know, during the week, I'm a workplace lawyer. I'd give out my phone number, but you'll get it in a couple minutes. And, you know, only 45 or 55% of the people listening online are in this country anyways. And I'm not licensed all over the world where people are listening to this show en masse. And I got to tell you, the people listening to this show aren't a bunch of dummies either. The statistics show that they mostly have higher education and high income levels and all kinds of qualities those advertisers would love to get a hold of. So this is the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyers Show on Talk Radio 790 KABC. Tune in next week if we're still here. Have a wonderful week at work.
This show furnished by Karl Gerber and Employment Lawyers Group.